we should probably get flying because it's almost 3 now. And I need to do a hard stop at 4.
Okay, all right, we should probably get going.
Yeah. So, what would you like to practice? There's not really, I mean, we can talk about these things.
Yeah.
It may do you more good to just talk about them right now than to put you through a mock check ride type of deal. Because, you know, if you're, it's better to do that. It's better to do the mock check ride if you're actually closer to your check ride, if it's imminent.
Okay.
But because you'll be able to retain it all. If we do this now, if we just start doing mock check rides from now till when you take it, then you kind of lose track of really the rounded training that we do.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let's see, what else was there? Reasonable running landing. Okay, that's fine. Does he give you a manifold pressure, or he just says, okay, well, when he says running landing, does he give you say, okay, you have 19 inches, or does he just say, show me a running landing?
Yes, he'll say, like, usually it's 2 inches below your hover power.
Okay.
So I would hope that he would work it into a scenario, but often they'll just say, okay, it's one of the maneuvers you have to demonstrate at the airport. Your max power is 18, 19 inches.
Okay.
Are you comfortable doing that maneuver?
Yes.
You're fairly comfortable?
Yeah.
Fairly comfortable with it. For 180 autos, he knows that we mostly do left patterns. Okay. So he'll likely have you do a 180 on the right,
okay.
2-8 right.
Okay.
So that's why we train on both sides.
Okay.
Low rotor RPM in a hover, just land.
Okay.
He'll
just roll. He'll roll it.
So I'm thinking that he will not actually like chop the throttle and give you a hover auto.
He'll just roll slowly.
He may just roll slowly, and if you hear low rotor RPM, you just land. And just let it
settle.
Come down. He correlates governor off flight and low rotor RPM in the pattern.
What does that mean?
That will likely turn into a running landing. Low rotor RPM.
Oh, so the governor will be off.
Yeah.
And then he'll give you a low rotor RPM.
If you get low rotor RPM, the way I like to train with students is say, okay, you're pulling power, you get low rotor RPM, and after, realizing that you've not lost your engine, because we don't want to auto rotate if we don't have to. After realizing you haven't lost your engine, you do a little bit of experimentation to see how much power you actually have before you droop the rotor. And that's how we arrive at that low power landing that we have to do a running landing. Does that make sense?
All right.
Yeah, so one of the magnetos went out.
Or to be similar to like if the clutch light goes on and you have to make a landing with the clutch light on, because you're going to probably do a running landing on that because you don't know if you have full power.
True.
Or would you do a normal landing with the clutch light on?
I would do a normal landing. I would, in any situation, I think it is best to do a normal landing if you can.
Okay, so you'd set up for a normal approach.
If you have a main rotor temp and chip light, those two together, you auto rotate. No, land immediately.
Land immediately, but
you land immediately. You do not want to auto rotate.
Right, because if you might not have.
Yes.
It might be freezing up.
Yes, and if you are in a freewheeling state, then
you may not have the power to overcome the friction.
Yeah. So, running landing, 180 auto, low rotor RPM in a hover, just land, quick stop, to the point at 50 knots, and then a surprise one on takeoff.
So he'll just say, okay, show me a quick stop, and then I'll take off, and then I do the 40, 50 knots, 40, and then he'll say, okay, quick stop, and then you do that, and then I'll be taking off, and he'll say, okay, quick stop.
Or he will say, abort takeoff, or do something, but simulated aborted takeoff.
Okay. I've never done a quick stop like maybe that low, right? Because if I'm doing a normal takeoff, I'm not that high. Not as high as I was.
But you're a little higher when you're at 45 knots, right?
Well, as you start to pitch up.
And I'm sure
so that's when he's gonna.
That's about what.
Okay, he'll call it at that point.
Yeah. You keep in mind that DPEs, they don't know who you are. They've never flown with you, but they show up one day with somebody they've never flown with, and they give you this evaluation ride. So they don't want to push more boundaries than they need to make sure that you're safe. And so they're not going to do anything. I would not expect anything traumatic.
Okay.
Because they don't want to be traumatized. They don't want to die.
Okay.
You know?
So they're not going to pick like a forced landing area where, okay, you only have this postage-sized field to hit, or you were going to die.
No.
Right.
And of course, it's their job to know what is an appropriate evaluation level for you as a private pilot. So that he's going to get you next to a wide open place. It's just up to you to see it. So just make sure you're looking around. In that situation, make sure you're looking around. Keeping in mind that the best landing spot may be behind you.
Right. Okay. And most likely you'll have to make a turn.
Likely, but don't rule out that something's in front of you.
Okay.
And you know, it may be in a crosswind. Like, that's when you have to say, oh my gosh, where's the wind coming from? And that's as soon as you leave the ground here, you're asking yourself, where's the wind coming from? You will have planned a cross-country flight, so you'll be pretty familiar with where the wind is supposed to be coming from.
Okay.
So you'll have that in your mind, so that you will be looking in the appropriate direction. If you know that the wind is coming from in front of you, then or from behind you, then you know you're going to have to turn around.
Is it reasonable to go by the? Okay, so let's say we get the ATIS and okay, it tells us the wind direction.
Mm-hmm.
And is it reasonable to, like, you know, project that out to over the hills, or no? You have to evaluate. He expects you to evaluate. Okay,
well,
where's the wind as you're flying around? Like today, it's not really that windy, so it's
right.
not gonna. It may be hard to see, you know, grass move or smoke or water, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you just say, well, okay, the wind was, you know, 280 on, you know, when I left the airport. Or
you can do that. I would take into account the elevation and the fact that you know the winds shift once we get past these hills. So make sure you're using things that are relevant. If you can't see any indications on the ground, then you have a device here. You can look at ground speed and your indicated and compare those. That's the easiest way.
And then the max performance takeoff, does he give you an obstacle? Like, you say, okay, you have an obstacle, 50-foot obstacle out there, or does he just say, okay, give me max performance takeoff?
He'll likely say, you know, your obstacle is at 200 feet or something like that.
Okay.
But what he's expecting is the maneuver guide description of, you know, from the ground, you come up off the ground, you establish a 40-knot attitude, and keep that power pulled until you're above your obstacles.
Okay.
What he's also looking for is a really marked transition between that max power takeoff profile, and then you're like, okay, I'm clear of my obstacles. Okay. Then you pitch forward and get your airspeed, so you get out of that height velocity diagram, black zone. So a very definite authoritative return back to a normal flight profile, so you can get back to safer flight. Okay. Steep approach to the ground.
Okay. Yeah, so it's to the ground. It's not to a hover. It's to the ground. To the ground. Okay.
Which is something worth practicing. Yeah. Do you do that much?
Yeah, I always do it to the ground. Yeah.
Okay, good. Great. So we can do however much of that you would like to do to practice.
Okay. Well, let's just do all of it. Well, let's just do what we can.
Okay. Have you done the power check on the way out? The power check that we talked about?
Yeah, so 60 knots, 500 feet per minute, and then 2 inches, would be 2 inches below the max.
Yeah.
Manifold pressure.
Right.
At that altitude, right? So I'm going to look at like here. So I'm going to look at, let's say the hill's at 2,000 feet. Right. I'm not doing the sea level one. I have to look at the 2,000 foot one, and then 2 inches from that.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
All right, so our seat belts are fastened.
Yep.
Fuel shut-off valve is on. So I could Selective friction is coming off.
I did talk to him about, you know, normal and steep approaches. You know, we train to keep your rate of descent below 300 feet per minute. And I asked him, I was like, sometimes the wind provides that we can actually descend faster than that without a risk of vortex ring state or something like that.
Meaning if you have ETL.
Mm-hmm. That we have, you know, that we can descend faster or approach faster or something like that. And he seemed, that was that note there, that he seemed to be pretty reasonable about managing your rate of approach and your airspeed and your rate of descent. You know, as long as you're staying in control.
Okay.
And you're not getting wild, you're keeping your angle and you're not going to flare at the end to make your spot, then he seemed to not be a super stickler about that.
Okay.
About those parameters.
Okay. Very good. All right, so the rotor brake is disengaged. Circuit breakers are all in. Carb heat is off. Mixture is full rich. Mixture is installed. Landing lights are off. Avionics switches off. Clutch is disengaged. Altimeter is set to the field elevation. Governor switch. I forgot if you were a governor switch on or off person.
I would say go by the checklist you have.
It's on.
Okay.
Was he a governor on or off, or he didn't really care?
It really is, it's a technique thing. So if you are comfortable and practiced with monitoring the throttle with the governor on, then do what is comfortable for you. If that's how you've been trained.
Okay.
If you prefer to keep the governor off, then that's fine. Just remember to turn it on. You know, don't start now. You have 80 something hours.
Yeah.
Don't start now trying to anticipate, because the thing too, Rick, is that Ken Suzuki is, you know, he's a great check ride option. It may turn out that for some reason you check with somebody else.
No, I don't understand.
So the goal is to learn things right, which we teach you well here.
Okay.
And then, you know, hold to that. Stay in your flow. Stay with the checklist. If this is your checklist that you've been using for years, then use this checklist.
Okay.
And if they tell you, you know, you should have your governor off, okay.
Okay.
You know, everybody has their technique.
All right. So half of my training's been with the governor. So with Jacob, is governor's on. With Mark, pretty much everybody after Mark, it's been governor off. So I kind of got about half. I have about half of it. That's why I just asked people, are you a governor off?
Yeah, I mean, what do you prefer? What do you find that you prefer?
Well, I don't know if it makes that much difference. I'm used to governor off because I just use governor off.
Okay.
But
That
I mean,
fine.
but I like I said, I kind of do both ways. So.
Okay. Eventually, you know, we encourage you to, the theme of today, the recurring message to people, to students, has been, you know, there's technique everywhere. There's so much technique. Knowing what the book says, as much as books say about technique, about how to do things, knowing what that says, and then taking the technique and being able to decipher what is technique. Then you add it all up, you take what you want, you leave what you don't, and you start making your systems.
Okay.
And that's how you become a pilot in command.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna have the governor switch off then. So
Okay.
it's been flown. I'll give it one twist. Roll into the detent. Verify close. Battery and strobe switches are on.
You're clear on the left.
Clear?
We do have plenty of space, but I'll keep you clear of his wing over here once
All
we
right.
pick up.
And the person that fueled the aircraft told us to park to the right of 7059er.
Okay.
When we come back, because he thought we were too close. I don't think we're too close, but anyway, he thought we were too close.
That's fine.
I don't know if there's enough room at the end, but we can look at that.
Well, also they put 2 Bravo November in a funky place, so well, if that's what he wanted, then we can do that.